If you are trying to build like a budget gaming PC right now, or even if you're just looking to upgrade your home office setup, you are actually currently losing a blind bidding war.
Yeah, you really are.
You're losing to a multi-billion-dollar enterprise data center. And it's over a component you probably haven't even thought much about in years, which is the CPU.
Right, the central processing unit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, for the past couple of years, the tech world has been just exclusively obsessed with the AI gold rush. And the absolute undisputed king of that rush was the GPU, the graphics processing unit.
Oh, absolutely.
But today, we're looking at a massive, completely hidden plot twist in that story. The traditional everyday CPU is suddenly like the most supply-constrained, fiercely fought-over piece of silicon on the planet.
It is a profound structural reversal. I mean, this isn't just some temporary supply chain bottleneck caused by a shipping delay or something.
Right.
The fundamental way a data center is physically constructed is being torn down and re-engineered, and that's because the nature of artificial intelligence itself has evolved.
Yeah, and to figure out exactly why this is happening, we have a really revealing stack of sources for our deep dive today.
We've got some great material.
We really do. We are pulling from a recent Fox Business interview with ARM's CEO Renee Haas, and we're looking through some incredibly dense technical architecture blogs published by AMD and Nvidia.
Good luck getting through those without a coffee.
Seriously.
Uh-huh.
We're also analyzing market forecasts from Counterpoint Research and combining all of that with supply chain reporting from Tom's Hardware.
It really gives us a 360-degree view, you know? We get to see the underlying architecture from the chip designers, the financial projections from the analysts, and, well, the hard reality of where physical inventory is actually moving.
Yeah. And our mission for you today is to put all those pieces together. By the end of this deep dive, you will understand exactly why the infrastructure of AI is fundamentally breaking and rebuilding itself.
It's a huge shift.
It is. We're also going to cover what a new technology called agentic AI has to do with it, and how this historic shift is dethroning the traditional tech giants who have ruled the computing market for decades. Okay, let's unpack this.
So we really have to start with the workload because the entire physical layout of a server rack is dictated by what the software is actually trying to accomplish.
Right, form follows function.
Exactly. In the first wave of generative AI, which is the chatbot wave that most people use, the architecture was incredibly straightforward. You type a prompt, the system crunches the data, and it spits out an answer.
And that specific workload heavily favored GPUs, right? Because GPUs are essentially thousands of tiny, relatively simple calculators working simultaneously.
Yeah, they are perfect for raw mathematical lifting, like generating a text response or rendering an image.
So in those data centers, the CPU is basically just a middle manager routing traffic.
Pretty much.
I think the standard ratio is 1 CPU to 8 GPUs. So just one central processor managing the input and output for 8 massive, power-hungry graphics cards.
Right. But we are moving past basic chatbots now. We're entering the era of agentic AI. We aren't just asking for text responses anymore. We are deploying AI agents to achieve complex multi-step goals.
I was reading through the AMD architecture blog, and the analogy that really comes to mind is the difference between a short-order cook and a general manager.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, so a chatbot is a short-order cook. You ask for a burger, it cooks the burger, and the transaction is over. But an AI agent acts like a general manager.
Right, it's managing a whole process.
Exactly. You give it a high-level goal, and it has to break that goal down into steps. It checks inventory, logs into the supplier database, maybe negotiates prices via an API, then it checks the corporate budget, and loops back to update the accounting software.
And when you ask software to act like a general manager, it changes the compute profile entirely. I mean, GPUs are terrible at logical orchestration.
Because they're just calculators.
Yeah, they are built for parallel math, not for complex decision trees. An AI agent requires sequential logic. It has to constantly query enterprise databases, trigger APIs, run legacy enterprise software, and crucially check security permissions at every single step.
Just to ensure it's actually authorized to make those moves in the first place.
Right. Then it evaluates its own output and loops through the process again.
And all of that logical branching, permission checking, and software orchestration that is classic CPU work. CPUs have fewer cores than GPUs, but those cores are massively complex and designed to handle sequential, logical tasks.
Exactly. And because the workload is shifting from pure math to logical orchestration, that old 1 to 8 ratio is completely dead.
Wow.
Yeah, it is rapidly tightening to 1 to 4. And according to Intel's latest projections, we are actually heading toward a 1 to 1 ratio in data centers.
That's a huge shift.
It is. In certain highly specialized agentic environments, the balance is tipping, so there are actually more CPUs than GPUs.
Which totally explains the market forecasts. AMD projects that the total addressable market for server CPUs is going to grow at over 35% annually. They're saying it'll hit $120 billion by 2030.
The numbers are staggering.
But wait, I have a mechanical question here. If a data center suddenly realizes it needs way more CPUs to act as these general managers, why don't they just slide more CPUs into their existing server racks?
Oh, if only it were that easy.
Right. Like, if you have a box with 8 GPUs and 1 CPU, just plug 3 more CPUs into the motherboard.
What's fascinating here is that server motherboards simply aren't built like Lego sets. The physical architecture of a GPU-heavy rack doesn't support it at all.
So you can't just snap them in.
No, you cannot just slot a CPU into a PCIe lane the way you can a graphics card. CPUs require dedicated sockets, their own massive memory channels, and entirely different cooling arrays.
Okay, that makes sense.
According to AMD's engineering breakdown, data centers are having to build entirely separate, newly engineered agentic CPU racks. These are dedicated strictly to orchestration, and they just sit directly alongside the GPU racks. You are essentially building a parallel brain.
And I guess if you don't build those CPU racks, your highly expensive GPUs just sit there idling, waiting for instructions from an overwhelmed processor.
Which is the absolute ultimate sin in a data center. You never want a $30,000 GPU waiting around doing nothing.
No, definitely not. And that structural reality leads us directly into the supply chain reporting from Tom's Hardware.
Yeah, the fallout from this is intense.
It really is. The enterprise market has realized all at once that they don't have the hardware required to run agentic AI. And the immediate real-world consequence is a massive supply crunch.
Oh, massive.
Intel's chief financial officer, David Zinsner, confirmed this ratio shift on their earnings call. He noted that their unmet demand for server CPUs starts with the B.
Billions.
Billions of dollars of demand they simply cannot fulfill right now.
The pipeline is completely clogged. I mean, if a hyperscaler wants to order high-end server CPUs right now, lead times are stretching up to 6 months.
Half a year just waiting for parts.
Yeah. And basic economics tells us what happens to pricing in that scenario. Server CPU prices have risen 10 to 20% since just March of 2026.
Wow.
And analysts predict further 8 to 10% hikes in the second half of the year.
And here is where it actually impacts the average consumer. The wildest part of the Tom's Hardware report is how Intel is trying to cope with this demand.
It's a drastic move.
It is, because semiconductor fabrication plants, the fabs, they run at maximum capacity. You can't just flip a switch to make more chips.
Right, they're fully booked.
So Intel is literally shifting wafer production capacity away from consumer PC chips in order to prioritize their high-end Xeon data center chips.
Yeah, they have to prioritize somewhere.
And because of this, consumer CPU prices have already gone up 5 to 10%. Plus, Intel is projecting a double-digit percentage decline in PC unit volumes.
You have to remember, silicon wafers take up to 3 months to physically bake and process in a fab. You only have so many lithography machines. The company has to choose what to print on those wafers.
I need to push back on this strategy, though, because Intel is actively starving its PC ecosystem.
Yeah.
The market that literally made them a household name, that feels incredibly short-sighted.
It sounds crazy from the outside, sure.
Right. How does a board justify crippling their foundational consumer product just to chase a server trend?
You have to look at the average selling prices, the ASPs. A consumer laptop chip might net Intel a couple $100. A massive, high-core count server processor sells for thousands of dollars a piece at incredibly high margins.
Okay, when you put it like that.
Right. When you have a fab capacity limit and billions of dollars of unmet enterprise demand offering massive premiums, the business math is ruthless. The consumer market simply doesn't offer the return on investment that the enterprise agentic AI market does right now.
So the gravitational pull of enterprise AI is so strong, it's warping global manufacturing. But even with Intel and AMD prioritizing their server chips, it still isn't enough to meet demand. And that struggle has opened a window for the rest of the industry to question if the foundational technology those companies use, the legacy by 86 architecture, is actually the right tool for the job anymore.
Yeah, the x86 architecture has been the bedrock of personal and enterprise computing for 40 years. It is a highly complex instruction set that tells the hardware how to execute software.
But it has a major flaw.
It is notoriously power hungry. And in the modern data center, power consumption is the absolute limiting factor.
Which brings us to the disruptors stepping into the void here, ARM. For some context, since 1990, ARM has operated out of Cambridge, England, strictly designing the blueprints for chips.
Right, just the designs.
Exactly. They never manufactured the physical silicon. They licensed their reduced instruction set designs to companies like Apple or Qualcomm, who then built the actual physical chips. But now, ARM is releasing its first physical semiconductor, the ARM AGI CPU.
And moving from an intellectual property licensor to a physical hardware vendor is a massive pivot. It requires managing physical supply chains, fabrication partnerships, and physical inventory.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Listen to the economics ARM CEO Rene Haas laid out on Fox Business. In their old IP licensing model, if a partner sold a chip for $1,000 based on ARM's blueprint, ARM made roughly $50 in profit.
A tiny slice.
Yeah, but by contracting out the manufacturing and selling the physical chip themselves, they capture roughly 50% gross margins. On that same $1,000, they net around $500. It's a 10x gross profit jump.
It's an unbelievable margin increase, and Haas is projecting this shift will generate $15 billion in annual revenue for the company in 5 years, up from roughly $1 billion today.
From 1 to 15, that's insane.
He stated this single product line has a $100 billion total addressable market.
And they already secured Meta as their lead partner. Meta came to them specifically because they wanted ARM's signature low-power efficiency. The ARM AGI CPU reportedly delivers twice the performance in the exact same power envelope as its x86 competitors from Intel and AMD.
That phrase, the exact same power envelope, is everything. Data centers are entirely bound by physics.
You can't just plug in more power.
No, you are limited by the megawatt capacity of the local electrical grid, and you are limited by how much heat you can physically extract from the server racks before the silicon melts. If you can get double the orchestration logic done without drawing another watt of power, you take that deal immediately.
And ARM is distributing this new hardware through major infrastructure partners like Supermicro and Lenovo. They are selling air-cooled racks that run at 36 kilowatts and house about 8,000 cores.
Which is huge on its own.
Right. But they're also selling these liquid-cooled behemoths that pack more than 45,000 cores into a single rack.
Unbelievable density.
And the development of all this was kept completely under wraps. It was brainstormed daily by Haas and Masayoshi Son, whose company SoftBank owns 90% of ARM.
The reason they could keep a hardware pivot of this magnitude a secret is due to ARM's unique structural position. Because they provide the foundational blueprints for the entire mobile and low-power industry, they hold highly confidential roadmap discussions with virtually every tech CEO.
So they already know everyone's secrets.
Exactly. They possess the trade secrets of all their partners, so they have built an internal culture of intense data discipline.
But building your own chips means competing directly with the very people who buy your blueprints.
It does.
If you start selling a physical server CPU, you are suddenly competing with Amazon, Microsoft, and Google for server space. How does that not trigger a massive industry war with their partners?
I know, it seems like a paradox. But ARM's traditional partners actually supported the move. To understand why, you have to look at the software ecosystem.
Okay, how so?
Well, ARM processors read a fundamentally different language than IOR A6 processors. For decades, enterprise server software was written almost exclusively for IOR A6. By ARM flooding the market with their own highly capable physical server chips, it forces software developers to finally port their applications and optimize their code for the ARM instruction set.
Ah, I see. So if a developer writes an enterprise tool for the ARM AGI CPU, that software will inherently run better on any other ARM-based chip.
Exactly the mechanism at play. Amazon, Google, and Microsoft are all currently trying to build their own custom ARM chips. They desperately want the global software ecosystem to transition away from x86 and toward ARM.
So ARM is kind of doing the dirty work for them.
Precisely. ARM taking on the physical risk of seeding the data center market with hardware accelerates that software transition for everyone else.
That completely explains the transition. Counterpoint research calls the hyperscaler rebellion. The market share projections here show a sweeping industry-wide rejection of legacy by 86 CPUs. Counterpoint predicts that ARM-based CPUs will capture a staggering 90% of the AI ASIC server CPU market by 2029.
And that's up from just 25% in 2025.
A total market inversion in 4 years.
Yeah, and note the term ASIC there, application-specific integrated circuit.
Right, an ASIC is a chip designed to do one exact job incredibly well, rather than being a general-purpose tool like a standard CPU.
And the hyperscalers, the massive cloud providers like AWS and Google Cloud, are realizing that standard off-the-shelf CPUs from Intel or AMD just don't fit their specific agentic AI architectures anymore.
They're moving away from standard parts.
They are ditching merchant silicon entirely. Google is rolling out their in-house Axion chip, AWS has their Graviton processors, Microsoft is deploying the Azure Cobalt, and Meta is building out their MTIA infrastructure.
Because everyone is making their own.
Yeah, they are building custom ARM CPUs to pair specifically with their own custom AI accelerators.
Which eliminates their dependency on external vendors, allows them to recapture the profit margins they were paying to chip makers, and lets them control the physical efficiency of their servers.
It's a win across the board for them.
But the legacy by 86 monopoly isn't just taking hits from the cloud providers. The most devastating blow is coming from Nvidia itself.
Oh, absolutely. Nvidia sees the exact same bottleneck. They aren't just relying on their GPUs to run the AI revolution anymore. They are fully embracing the ARM architecture to build the CPU side of the equation.
I was looking at the technical specs for Nvidia's new Vera CPU, and it is a purpose-built engine for this new era. It uses custom Olympus ARM-compatible cores, and it is specifically designed for agentic AI tool calls and something called sandboxing.
Sandboxing is a critical security mechanism. When an AI agent decides it needs to execute a tool, say, modify a corporate database, the CPU isolates that command in a secure virtual sandbox to verify permissions before letting the action through.
Like a quarantine zone.
Exactly. It prevents the AI from accidentally deleting critical files or accessing unauthorized data.
But constantly checking permissions in a sandbox means the CPU has to rapidly pull data from memory, check it, and send the result back. If the connection between the processor and the memory is slow, the whole system grinds to a halt.
That is the classic memory bottleneck, and it is why the physical connection NVIDIA engineered between the Vera CPU and their GPUs is so vital.
The PCIe connection?
Well, traditional data centers connect different processors using standard motherboards and that protocol called PCIe. You can think of PCIe lanes like a standardized highway system connecting the different CIEs on a motherboard.
But NVIDIA bypassed the public highway entirely here. They connect the chips using NVLink C2C, which stands for chip-to-chip.
They built a custom hyperspeed tunnel directly between the CPU and the GPU. The upcoming PCIe Gen 6 standard is incredibly fast, but NVLink C2C is 7 times faster.
Right, 7 times faster.
Yeah, it pushes 1.8 terabytes of data per second bidirectionally.
And the reason you need 1.8 terabytes of bandwidth isn't to move, like a single large file. It's to handle the millions of tiny, constant permission checks and API triggers the AI agent is firing off every second without creating a traffic jam.
NVIDIA pairs that connection with ultra-efficient LPDDR R5X memory. Standard server memory draws a lot of power. LPDDR R5X operates like a wider, lower-power data lane.
Keeping the heat down.
Right. It allows the system to sustain that massive 1.8 terabyte bandwidth without exceeding the thermal limits of the server rack. They are actually packaging these directly together in systems like the GB200 NVL4, which physically solders 4 Blackwell GPUs and 2 Grace CPUs onto the exact same board.
So what does this all mean? We're watching the x86 architecture lose its grip on the high-end computing market in real time, and it's being replaced by highly specific ARM designs.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the data center industry has fundamentally shifted its priorities. Raw compute power used to be the only metric that mattered.
Now it's about efficiency.
Now, energy efficiency and custom tight integration between the CPU and the AI accelerator are the primary drivers. You cannot run complex agentic AI efficiently on generic one-size-fits-all hardware. The Counterpoint research data makes it clear this shift accelerates dramatically in the second half of 2026.
It really recontextualizes everything we thought we knew about the AI boom. We started with this established narrative that AI was purely a GPU story. But as the intelligence evolved from chatbots to agentic AI, these digital workforces executing complex multi-step tasks, It exposed a massive vulnerability in orchestration. It turned into a massive CPU story.
And that sudden demand for logical orchestration just broke the supply chain. It caused server CPU lead times to stretch to 6 months, drove enterprise prices up 20%, and forced the major hyperscalers and ARM to completely rewrite the rules of data center architecture.
It's a totally new landscape.
The digital infrastructure powering our economy is no longer just a collection of servers. It is evolving into a distributed, multi-layered AI factory. You have your GPU tiers providing the raw mathematical thought, and your new agentic CPU tiers acting as the administrative nervous system, securing and orchestrating every action.
Which leaves us with a final forward-looking thought for you to mull over. We know from the supply chain data that Intel is already actively starting its consumer PC manufacturing lines to feed this lucrative server frenzy. And at the exact same time, headlines are teasing that Nvidia is preparing to launch its first consumer CPU.
Yeah, that's a wild rumor.
Rumored to be built on an ARM architecture with their RTX graphics cores built directly in.
The enterprise market is pulling all the traditional resources away from the consumer market.
Exactly. If traditional x86 giants abandon the budget PC consumer because they're too busy chasing a $120 billion enterprise AI market, will the future of personal computing be handed over entirely to these new ARM-based AI-driven chips? With all the focus, manufacturing capacity, and innovation being poured into the enterprise data center, are we quietly witnessing the death of the traditional consumer PC as we know it?